Alright, we're almost at the end of 2022, and you know what that means. It is time for my best comics of 2022. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to yet another video. This is probably my last one of 2022, so I figured I'd end it with the best comics I've read for the year. I will say, if anybody did watch my best of 2022 so far, from I think it was August when I did that, the list is not 100% the same. There have definitely been some changes. There's a lot of stuff that came out in the latter half of the year that really captured my attention. And also, really, one of the series that made its way on was one that had already been out when I did this. I just hadn't read it yet. Actually, two of them are ones that have been out and I hadn't read them yet. So now that I've had a chance to read them, they've basically made their way onto this list. So I have 11 total. They are not in any particular order. I just have them down. So let's just jump right into it. Alright, so kicking off the list is one, though, that remained from earlier in the year. We actually just got issue 4 today in the mail. We were surprised by it, but it was totally cool, so I'm looking forward to reading it. But that is RWA, which is short for Reactive Weaponized Armor. This is a really cool series. It's it's independently done by Will G and his artist, and as I've said a couple of times, it is one of the coolest looking black and white books that I've ever seen, and I think that's part of the draw to it. Is it's just black, whites, and grays are the colors, and it looks really cool. The first 2 issues, actually I have reviews of all 3 issues on here. And be sure to check those out. But the first 2 issues were done basically concurrently, just 2 different viewpoints of the same event, and then issue 3 follows the RWA team much more closely, and it really started ramping the story up as far as the some of the backstory between the characters, and just the emotional content really was kicked into high gear. So from that point on, I've been ready to see what they're going to do with issue 4. Now that I've got it, I'm definitely going to be reading it probably over the next week or so. So keep an eye out, because I probably will have a video coming out so that y'all can know my thoughts on the story now, because 1, I think we're introduced to another couple of characters, but 2, from what I remember seeing just some of the concept drawings, we're going to be introduced to a new form with the armor, and I'm really excited to see what that looks like and what it does. So yeah, not to spoil it too much, but definitely one worth checking out. I'm going to try to get with Will, the writer, and see if I can find out how you can purchase these books online, and I'll definitely be sure to share the link. If it's not in this video by that time, you'll see it up on our socials, so just keep an eye out for it, so that way you guys can get in on this series and find out why I like it so much. So yeah, Reactive Weaponized Armor. Alright, so the next one on my list is the newest one, and I gotta thank our boy Bearded Comic Bro. He has been preaching about this story since it came out, and it's called Do a Powerbomb. I finally caught, he does these really awesome shorts on his channel where he talks about his 3 favorite comic books that he's looking forward to for that week. And he just happened to talk about Do a Powerbomb. I think it was number 7. And I had not read this yet. I actually hadn't even heard of the series, to be perfectly honest. And he gave the premise of it, and I'm like, well, it's got wrestling in it, so this has got to be pretty fun. And I am so glad I took his suggestion. I've read issues 1 and 2 so far, and I am 100% hooked. I love this. If you are a fan of wrestling and there's a supernatural element to this story, it's super cool. Issue 2 ended on a big twist for me, so I am 100% ready. I'll probably get issue 3 here soon and try to get caught up to where we are, so that I know exactly where we're at. But yeah, you have to read this. It is a crazy looking book art-wise, but it fits. And Yeah, that's basically all I can say. It almost looks a bit chaotic, but when you think about wrestling, it really fits what you see on TV. Because to be honest, professional wrestling is just chaos with a storyline somewhere in there. So yeah, definitely check this out. Thank you, Bearded, for recommending this one. So glad that I took you up on it. Okay, this next one is probably the best Valiant book that they've written in the past, I'd say, 4 or 5 years. Pretty much ever since Dinesh stepped down, this is probably the best book that they've had come out. Now, I have not read Book of Shadows and the Shadow War, which is also going on, but that said, anyway, yeah. So I'm talking about Bloodshot Unleashed. I actually just read number 4. This has been an amazing series. I will say it's the first Bloodshot that I've really read. I think I read a Bloodshot Zero a few years back, but I haven't read any of the arcs. So this was the first arc, and it was so good. This is a book full of action, gore, and blood. So this is definitely not kid friendly. But if you loved, like, what you saw in the movie is decent enough, but the books take it to like 11. So take that for what it's worth. But this was an action-packed series that seemed more like journal entries as the series went on, because there were a lot of flashbacks, and then but they seamlessly do these flashbacks with the current story. And in issue 4, really, it almost blurred the lines. You almost had to wonder which was which. But it was so good, so well written. Definitely check it out if you're a fan of Valiant and Bloodshot. It's just good. And Jay's even said that he thinks that this might be the best Bloodshot story. And that says a lot, because he's read pretty much all of them. Somewhere on the shelf behind me here is pretty much every Bloodshot run, I think, except for maybe stuff from the 90s. But all the 20 teens and other things, he's got pretty much everything in there. So yeah, take that for what it's worth, because Jay is one of the biggest Bloodshot fans that there is. Alright, so this next one, this is pretty much the only book from the big 2 that is on my list. And this is not a new book. This is a book that has been out. But this year I've decided to try and make it a point to go back and start reading some of the bigger stories in comics, especially from DC and Marvel, because those are the 2 big ones. Those are what a lot of your TV and movies, you get a lot of your content from those 2. So yeah, I had to read this, and I'm glad I did, because now I understand, for people who were fans of the book, why they thought the movie had nothing to do with it. And I'm talking about Civil War. Yeah, if you were a fan of the movie, I was a fan of the movie was good, but it was not Civil War. The book itself is so completely different than what you get in the movie. It's not even funny. It is better. I had a blast reading this. I've actually got a review up on it. And yeah, I'm glad I read it, because now I'm understanding the importance of some characters. I never truly realized like how big the Fantastic Four were, especially like Reed Richards in a lot of things. Hank Pym is huge in the universe, which begs the question as to why they went with Scott Lang for Ant-Man instead of doing Hank, but that's neither here nor there for the movie universe. It is a really good book. I recommend that if this is one of those must-read stories, if you're trying to understand the Marvel universe and whatnot, you get a good sense of who is where and kind of where loyalties lie. I would say the only slight disappointment I had reading the book is I was surprised at how much the X-Men were not in it. They were kind of mentioned. You saw a little bit of Wolverine, and then you saw like one small meeting with the mutants at the Xavier School, and then that was pretty much it. I thought, for whatever reason, I guess I thought that they would be a little more involved in it, but they weren't. So just that's probably my only critique, and that's not even that big a one, because everything else in the story made up for it. Alright, so moving along, this is there's only one issue out of this book, but like I said, this is Best Comics of 2022, not Best Series. So when this issue 1 came out, the creators, Dan Price and Casey, did such a great job of telling you about the book, but they didn't tell you about the book at the same time. So I'm talking about Bigfoot Knows Karate. And what I mean by the statement I just made was they were telling you about the book, but what they were showing you was maybe the first half of it, 3/4 maybe, as far as Bigfoot and Kung Fu Thulu, which is one of the coolest names ever for a villain. It's the twist that happens about 3/4 of the way or so. Literally, Jay and I were reading through the book because we had it up on, we were scrolling through it digitally. We hadn't got the physical yet. We're scrolling through it, we're reading it, and we got to this page, and literally for the last half of the book, we were going, holy crap. Like every other page, it felt like we were going, what is, and our jaws were on the floor. So kudos to Dan and Casey. I can understand why this book was one of the most read. I apologize to you guys. I don't remember the name of the site, but they have it up for you to read on a site, and it was like the 3rd most popular book of the year. Should have been the most popular in my opinion, but trust me when I say you need to check out this book, because issue 2 is fixing to come out, and I want to know more about this twist. And from what I have seen from some of the conceptual drawings, I say conceptual, but some of the drawings and whatnot, they're going to do that. So now I'm so curious what they're going to do with this universe that I can't wait to see the payoff for it. Basically, I don't know how many issues they have planned, but hopefully they all just kind of go in this same direction. The first issue had a nice pace to it, had the big twist, and I just hope that they kind of continue that with issue 2. So sorry for a bit of a ramble there, but yeah, this is one of those books you have to check out. Okay, so next on this list is from AWA Upshot. It's called Chariot. I had the trade for this for a little while. I kind of missed the boat on the series when it came out. I want to say that I got issue 1, and then for whatever reason, I thought I added it to my pull list and I didn't. But that's fine, because they came out with a trade, and I got to read it all in one big go anyway. And if you are a fan of kind of spy, espionage / Knight Rider, this is a book for you. You will 100% have a blast reading this. I've heard rumblings that they might do a continuation. I believe that this also has been picked up possibly for a TV adaptation, which to me would be awesome. It would literally be a modern version of Knight Rider, probably done a little better. I'm a Knight Rider fan, but the storyline behind this, where it's basically it's a car that has the soul or essence of the spy that basically kind of died in it, in its CPU or something. So the car basically is kind of like, it's kind of alive and it's kind of not. It's hard to explain it without actually really spoiling the book too much, but it is really good, and it kind of takes a character down on his luck and this and that, and the tides turn. He gets tied up in a whole bunch of stuff because of this car, and then they ended on a really cool note, and they left it wide open for a continuation, which I think was the goal of this. So I'm curious to see, one, when it comes back, where they take the story and what they do with the guy in the car as far as tackling different issues around the world or the U.S. and this and that. And yeah, it's a really cool series that has a lot of potential to be around for a while, I think. So yeah, definitely check it out, and just check out a lot of stuff. AWA is really, really cool. Knighted was another series of theirs that I was a big fan of this year. And there's a whole host of others that I know I'm slipping out of my mind, but yeah, definitely check it out. Alright, so now we're down to the last 5. This next one is from a publisher that we have praised many, many times on this channel, and I'm so glad Jay showed me them. But the book is called Dig, and it's from Comics Tribe. This is a one-shot that is a kind of I guess a side or a fill-in between I guess where Sync is the main story. They have two volumes out of that so far. I want to say that this may be a filler until I guess they start writing volume 3, because I believe a volume 3 is coming. If it's not and it's its own standalone thing, that's totally cool. This was one of the most violent and brutal books I've ever read, and it was absolutely amazing. This story, I don't even know. I was hooked from the beginning. I had not read any of Sync yet, but we got this. I had to check it out. I had some time one night, and man, I can't even tell you. The villain in this, I will say this, Comics Tribe has two of the best villains ever created. They have Oxymoron, who is like Joker turned up to 15. Like, he makes Joker look mild at times with some of the stuff that he does. And then the villain in this one is one of the most crazy, psychotic killers I have ever seen, and maybe that I've ever seen. He blew me away. Like, he was almost more interesting than the hero, which is Dig is actually the name of the hero. So yeah, you have to check this out. Head over to Comics Tribe website. Check out Dig. Check out all of Sync. Check out pretty much their entire catalog. We've done a review of Red 10 on here. I believe Jay has done The Standard, which is his favorite book of all time. So that should tell you something about where they're at. But Comics Tribe kills it. They don't come out with a lot, but when they do, it is exceptional. Literally everything is exceptional, and it's top-notch art, quality, you name it. They're one of the best, so yeah, check it out. Alright, so this next one is a returning one from last year's list because Volume 2 was just that good. I'm talking about Good Boy. What can I say about this series that hasn't already been said? Volume 1 was cool. Very, very much like the concept said. It's a reverse John Wick. Volume 2 goes in a whole new direction with this story. Dr. Christie and Garrett have absolutely probably one of the best of all time, in my opinion, with this series. And I can't wait for Volume 3. There's actually, they just finished up, I believe, the Omnibus on Kickstarter. I think it just finished. Yes, it did, for earlier this month. Sorry for the confusion. Which will collect all 3 of volumes, and I can't wait. So, not to mention the fact that we've got probably like 20 different covers at this point of all the issues. It's ridiculous because we're a part of Garrett's Patreon, so we get a lot of really cool stuff, and Good Boy, of course, is a regular. But they also have another character coming out, and basically it looks like they're going to expand on this universe with another series called Bad Girl. So I think that's cool. It's just one of those really cool universes that you can't help but love when you read it, and it is so well thought out and just deep. I really can't give you enough good adjectives. I know I'm stuttering over my words, but it's the honest to God truth. It's one of the best things going. And I don't see that changing for 2023 as they do Volume 3. So yeah, definitely get down to your LCS. Volumes 1 and 2 are out. You can get them in trades and check them out. And then as Volume 3 comes out in stores, jump on board. That's all I can tell you. It's one of the best things going. Okay, so this next one is one, again, that had been out for a while. And I knew about it. I just didn't realize that it had actually been out. I'd seen covers. I was just thinking it was a bunch of different variants for number 1. And it turns out, as I'm reading everything, it was actually already on issue, I believe, 5. And I'm talking about 8 billion Genies. This is such a cool concept. It is from the creators of Curse Words, which all of us here on the channel were a big fan of that series. So coming into this one, I had a good idea that I was going to enjoy this, and it didn't disappoint. Basically, the premise of this is all of a sudden everyone on Earth, which is a total of 8 billion, gets a genie and they get one wish. And as you can imagine, calamity ensues, and it's a very smart concept of you have your first issue, and then it was like 8 minutes after, they call it G-Day, then they have 8 months, 8 years, etc., etc. That's how all these are progressing, and you see how the world is changing. And usually in about the beginning of each issue, they tell you the population of the world that's left and how many genies are left. Basically, I think what it's going to boil down to is they're hoping that whomever has the very last wish does something for the betterment of mankind. And you kind of see different phases where it's like you get people who wish to be superheroes, you got people who wish for world peace, you got world powers that all at the same time, for the most part, wish to be the most powerful country, and then whomever just happened to make the wish last by like seconds, that's the one that basically works. So there's a lot of calamity and chaos at first, and then the underlining story beneath all of it is really, really cool and really, really deep. So definitely check this series out. It is beautifully drawn and illustrated, as come to expected, because Curse Words was the same way. But definitely give this a read. I think you will like the concept and what you see, and what I think the idea behind it is for humanity is a good way to put it. So yeah, definitely check that out. Alright, so final two. These both are series I'm going to tell you that we have harped on a lot from people that we talk about, it feels like every video. So these, I will say this, these last two are both a tie because they all just have good stuff. So number 2 is my slot for Bad Bug. You've heard me talk about them all year long. I've gotten stuff regularly from them. It feels like almost monthly at this point. So my twofer for this is Midnight Highway and Dead End Moon. Midnight Highway was the very first book from Bad Bug that I had ever seen. And thank you to Dave Lentz for showing us a huge list of stuff, because I want to say one of the comics that Jay picked, which is actually next, I happened to get suggested Midnight Highway because of it, and then we learned at that time that they were both the same publisher at that point, but that has since changed, and I'll explain that here in a minute. But yeah, Midnight Highway is fun. If you like your 80s horror, this is a book for you. Issue 3, which I will be doing a video on very soon, was hilarious. We just got that one in earlier this month. I've read it, and I haven't laughed that much in a long time in a book. And when that can happen, I just know it's going to be a good time. I like my humor, and that book had it in spades. That said, though, we do have an issue. We have a review of issues 1 and 2 here on the channel, so definitely check those out. I kind of did like a combo unboxing video, and then I talked about them because I read them both digitally before I got them in. It's kind of what I did here until I got the physical copies, so I knew what to expect. Now, Dead End Moon was my first book from Scott Wilkie, who is one of the main writers for Bad Bug. He has a lot of series out. And I can understand why Mike Tiener praises Scott so much, because the dude is talented. He's got some cool stuff out. This book was awesome. It is a supernatural western, and it is probably the best supernatural western, personally, that I have ever read or even seen a movie of. It was fun. It is deep. It's dark, but in a really, really good way. And then, of course, we got issue 2 not long ago after Kickstarter. And just, it's a series that's blown me away that I can't wait to see where the rest of the series goes to kind of close it out. I don't know how many issues Scott has planned. I don't know if I'm going to spoil myself and ask him. I just can't wait for the next one, basically. But yeah, keep an eye out, though, for more stuff from Scott, because Periwinkle was a book we backed, and it's a big graphic novel. That's going to be coming soon, and I have a feeling that that's going to be one of those instant, like, holiday classic kind of graphic novels, because it looks so good. I believe Jay's gotten to read the first 2 chapters, and then he told Scott, he goes, no more, I want to be surprised at the rest of the book. But he has said that the first 2 chapters blew him away, so take that for for what it is. But yeah, keep your eye out on Bad Bug. This whole year, 2022, was their first full year publishing. Before that, they've just done a couple of books here and there. And, you know, I thought they did a really good job. I obviously know nothing about what it's like to run a comic company, let alone the ins and outs of actually putting together a comic. The more I learn, the more I respect the people that do create them and create the good ones, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. So I'm excited to see where 2023 takes them and whatnot, see what books they come out with, and more of my favorite series from them, and then what new ones are coming. So yeah, keep an eye out. But check out Midnight Highway and Dead and Moon. I usually post a link to Bad Bug's store down in the comments. It's not as up to date as it normally is. That said, though, you can still get at least some of the past issues of these books. And then the next Kickstarter they run, which I believe probably will be coming in January, you can get any back issues from their entire catalog. So definitely keep an eye out. Just know that we're going to post the next Kickstarter for sure, so that way you can check everything out. Alright, so now we're down to the final. And I will preface this by saying these are not number one because we're such good friends with the writers. Because I'm really good friends with several of the writers on this list. It was one of those stories that had just kind of captured the imagination and whatnot. And then the other one just started. So, yeah, I'm talking about Pocus Hocus and Grandma Chainsaw. I will start with Pocus because that is the book that technically introduced us to Bad Bug. Because when issue 1 had first come out, Dave Lentz shared a list with Jay of projects he was working on. For whatever reason, Pocus Hocus stuck out in his mind, and man, am I glad that he did. This series has been amazing. It is a horror comedy. I can't think of the word that Alan has used to describe it. Went right out of my head. Of course, right as go figure. But that's it. It is awesome. The art choices in this were really cool. Most notably, the fact that for the first few issues, anything that wasn't magic was black and white, and then they would only add color when magic was used. And I thought that was a really good and that was a smart choice creatively, because then it makes the magic stuff more important. And then as you get into the latter issues where they eventually go into hell, then the book becomes more to life and more colorful. But the premise of the story basically is you have a magician that sold his soul for actual magic powers because he wanted to impress his father, who is one of the most renowned magicians in the world. But before he could really use everything and impress him, his father dies. So years later, he's doing everything, and he basically wants his soul back. And that's where everything in the comedy comes in. I thought at first that the big thing that Alan and Will had said is one of the things to get his soul back was if you could guess the demon's name. And while they did that, I'm not going to tell you his name. That was not even the beginning of the story. That happened, and then that just happened to be the twist for what was coming next. And they ended issue 4 on such a good note that I'm psyched for issue 5. And I think, as I said when Jay and I talked about issue 4, is that one of the best things about this series is that every single issue has gone somewhere and then some. And that, to me, that says a lot, because you get a lot of things where you have a really action-packed issue, and then you've got a setup issue or a couple of setup issues, and then the payoff. This was done in such a way that issue 2 might have been the biggest setup issue, but the story still went forward. And they've managed to find a way in telling the story so far where, yes, they're setting up things, but something new always happens anyway. And then maybe a couple of issues later, that's where the payoff from something they showed before. So you definitely want to read this from the beginning to now, so that you can come into issue 5 and everything is like, okay, cool. but it's just, you would never know that that was their first comic. Will Radford and Alan Dunford, this is the first comic they'd ever written, and it just turns out to be one of the best comics ever written. So transition over to Grandma Chainsaw. This is their second thing, and it's the exact same creative team from Pocus. It's Will, Alan, Jason Smith, who does the colors, Brian Bolando, who is one of the best up-and-coming artists. Him and Jason as an art team are magical. I hope that the entire world, when Pocus comes out through SourcePoint, sees and recognizes how amazing their work really is. How amazing everybody's work is. Because you have Dave Superstar Lentz on letters and editing. And Dave, I've said it and I mean it, is probably the best letterer in comics. Because, and I've had conversations with him, and I understand that lettering now is way more than a copy and paste in a bubble. Way more than that. So I have a new appreciation for what Dave and all letterers, Justin Birch is another guy that I've seen a lot of, and what they do. I have a whole new appreciation for that, and I hope eventually to learn that. So just a little sidebar. But yeah, so Grandma Chainsaw. The ash can for this was so cool, but again, in typical Will and Alan fashion, I should have known that this book was going to be a little more than just a grandma with a chainsaw. Yes, the title is very on the nose, and it is very much what you see in this book. But Hazel, who is the main character, or the grandma, has a lot more to her than just being a grandma. There's something supernatural, demonic there with her. You see it just from the get-go and in her house. And then the dead squad that you get at the end, that's where the comedy comes in. And their guy, and his name went out of my head. I'm going to put it down here in the screen once I look it up. But he's going to be a character that you love to hate, to a point that you almost hope he doesn't get killed, because you want to see him tortured more in future issues. So yeah, it was an instant hit. Just, again, a big kind of, oh yeah, I should know better than that by now with Alan and Will, that the story is going to be way more than what they're giving it. So definitely check it out, because I want to say issue 2 will come probably first quarter of 2022. I believe Pocus number 5 is the next thing they're going to be coming out with on Kickstarter. But just keep an eye out, because I want to say sometime in 2023 is when Pocus will come out through SourcePoint. And then more people will know it, why we love this series so much. So yeah, that is my entire list of best reads for 2022. I definitely want to know what yours are down in the comments, because I guarantee that there are some books that I've missed. I will say that, this year I concentrated a lot on Kickstarter stuff, and I'm realizing now, especially being over on the EXP, how much I'm missing from, not necessarily the big two, because Marvel and DC will always have good stuff, but the other stuff that you can buy in a store. I've realized that there's a lot that I've missed there. So my goal for 2023 is to try and balance out more between Kickstarter and get back into enjoying a lot of the stuff that I can get from my LCS, because I've honestly almost forgot how good Image was until the last couple of months, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love most of the series that Image come out with. Not to mention stuff, other publishers are really starting to come out. Mad Cave, Black Caravan was a good one. AWA, who had a book on this list, and so much more. Boom has had a lot of really good stuff. So there's a lot that I need to get caught back up on, and then just try to do a better job of keeping up with new series for next year. Anyways, so that's all I've got. If at any point you liked what you heard in the video, please be sure to hit the subscribe and the notification bell so you know anytime we upload anything else. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up, because that really helps us with the YouTube algorithm gods. But as always, you stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you guys next time. Later, everyone.